Good afternoon. You're listening to me, Shazia Wan, on the BBC Asian Network. Now, it's time for us to catch up with a true Bollywood legend in every sense of the word. With more than 100 movie appearances to her name, Shabana Azmi is here for a jam-packed 4 days. She's found time to come and talk to us here in the studio at the BBC Asian Network. She's talking at the House of Commons later about integration and identity. And she's also brought over her play called Broken Images for the first time ever in the UK. Shabana, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Now, while that track was on, you and I got talking a little bit about feminism and how important it is to empower women. And we were actually talking about one of my favourite films from back in the day, Amar Akbar Anthony. And your generation very much led the way for young feminists, for women like myself. How important is feminism for you?
Well, I'm very proud to be called a feminist. And considering we celebrated International Women's Day yesterday, it's only appropriate that we talk about what actually constitutes feminism. Because to my dismay, there is a section of young women who shy away from being called feminists. But they shy away from any ism of any kind. They don't want to be boxed into an ism, which I can understand. But basically, all feminism is asking for is equal access and equal opportunity to everything that's happening in the world that is available to men. And I wish to celebrate and salute all those women who did pioneering work in paving the way for us to demand our rights today. You know, women who struggled, who had to go through hell, but who finally made us succeed. So my salams and salutes to all of them.
What a wonderful way to put it. And of course, lots of events going on this week for International Women's Day, which was yesterday. Now, big moment for you later, House of Commons. You're talking about integration and identity. And the House of Commons is still very much underrepresenting not only women, but Black, Asian and minority ethnic women. What are you going to be saying? Can you give us a little taster of what might be in your speech later?
Well, basically, I think integration and identity is a very relevant topic today, because there's so much discourse taking around it in the wake of Donald Trump and Brexit and closer home, the rise of the BJP government, etc. And I think it's very important that we discuss it through sane debate. I think that people need to stop watching from the sidelines and take center stage, because it's very, very important. Because obviously integration is important, because if you didn't have integration, then a society would completely fall apart. But what does integration actually mean? Does it mean sameness? Is sameness even desirable? Of course not, because any society is to be judged by its embracing of pluralism. Surely that's the most important thing for the health of any democracy. And so all the misnomers of integration, they need to be tackled. And I would say that it means separate but equal. That would be my premise. I feel that there is an attempt to compress identity into a melting pot so that your individual identity is subsumed towards the larger goal. I think that's a fallacy. What we need to talk about is, firstly, identity is fluid. It's not fixed. Plus, what is very important is to see identity like a colorful mosaic which contributes to a larger whole, but in which individual identities are retained. And that's why being separate has to be celebrated, and separateness must be celebrated with granting equality.
So more a notion, Shabana, of celebrating our differences rather than this notion of, sometimes certainly with the UK government, as a British Asian woman, sometimes it almost feels like the notion of assimilation is put out there.
That's what I said, assimilation in the sense of a melting pot, which is undesirable and not healthy for any society at all.
There are many groups in America that in previous years have talked about, look, as you say, this notion of a melting pot, had enough of it. They talk about a salad bowl, and I feel like we're obsessed with putting labels and metaphors on these things. But by that, they mean that, look, separate, but all together. Do you think there's more room for that? And can that even happen with the things going on at the moment? You mentioned Brexit, you mentioned President Donald Trump, you mentioned the BJP. With the political environment being as almost unsettled as it is across the world, can we really integrate?
In fact, now more than ever before, because, this notion of the model minority, whether it is the model woman, whether it's the model LGBT community, whether it is the model anything, this notion is faulty, because what it is suggesting is that majoritarianism rules. And mobocracy can also be majoritarianism. So what is ethical and what is the good practice is what we have to follow. And today, when the world is becoming so diverse, and I feel it so much in the film industry, because the film industry is one place where you go on to making a film, and my God, there are Poles, there are Americans, there are Chinese, there are Indians, there are Africans, there are so many different communities all working on a film. And it's wonderful to have that diversity, because it gives a completely different take on how things need to be done in work ethics and all of that. So I really celebrate pluralism.
Shabana, how important do you think it is for us over here in the UK to celebrate Asian cinema when we're talking about diversity and different cultures and what different cultures offer?
When I first worked in England, it was, I think, in 1988 to 1989, I did a film with Shirley MacLaine, directed by John Schlesinger, called Madame Susatska. Now, in the original novel, which was written by Bernice Rubens, the character that I played was a Jewish mother. But because Ruth Chhabwala was doing the screenplay, she, along with John Schlesinger, decided to make her into an Indian woman. I was curious, and I asked John Schlesinger why he made the choice. And he said, well, the Asian is so much a part of the British fabric today that they need to be visible, they need to be represented, and they need to be represented not in their stereotypes or not with kid gloves, just the way they are, because they're now confident and strong enough. I remember that and remember being very heartened by that. It was a time when I used to come into London, and when I tried to hail a yellow cab, I could see a strong dismissal of my identity and the taxi driver going away as if...
So they wouldn't stop for you?
They wouldn't. So at that time, I'm talking about the 70s, okay? I'm talking about the 80s, late 80s. Now, when you look back so many years, of course, there's been a huge change. Asians are far more visible, but in comparison with their numbers, they really need to be more visible, not only here in Britain, but all over the world. Because if you look at Hollywood, it's only now that the blacks have just started being represented. But we as artists have always insisted on colorblind casting. We have said, why do the best part always have to go to the Caucasians? Why can't it be completely colorblind and anybody should be able to do anything? And we are far away from achieving that.
Absolutely, and we are. And we talk a lot on this show, Shabana, about diversity and equality and representation of different groups as well. And, you're talking about doing this project in the 80s that effectively encompass all of this. And we heard from one of our sort of famous TV actresses and authors, Mira Sayal, recently, and she said, look, she was in a TV show here, goodness gracious me, about 20
Yes, I know Mira very well, yes.
Yeah. And so Mira has come out recently and she said, look, we're tumbling backwards when it comes to diversity and the arts and representing our young Asian men and women. Would you agree with that, what Mira said, to an extent, that we've not necessarily learned from the past. We should be much further on than we are.
Well, it depends on whether you see the glass half empty or half full. If you look at the work that I have done here, the last film that I did was Gurinder Chadda's It's a Wonderful Afterlife. Then more recently, I did a play called Happy Birthday, Sunita. I've done a film called Bangla Town Banquet on BBC. So there's a substantial amount of work that I have done over here. And so I feel that there is visibility, but like I told you, there's a lot more that needs to be done. And it's very important that British Asian people bring this into focus.
Shabana, let's talk about Broken Images. This is your play, and you've brought it over here to the UK, and it's the first time. What made you do that?
Well, Baitak is a group that I've been associated. It's a UK-based group of the arts, and I've been associated with one of its founder members, Sangeeta Datta, for a long time. She saw the play in India, and she was very keen on bringing it here, and I'm really happy to have brought it, because amongst the many plays that I've done, it runs only for an hour without an interval, and it is a one-woman play, but I think it's technically the most challenging play that I've ever done, because it's just me in conversation with a recorded image of myself. So that was one shot recorded in 42 minutes straight without a break. And what is very challenging about this is, you see, normally when you're in an ensemble, then if you miss something, your co-actors can always cover up for you. But this is a fixed image on the screen, and she's not going to come to my rescue. So I have to get it absolutely right. So there's a certain tension in that. And interestingly, Girish Karnad has always been interested in masks, in the masks that we put up. And there is a tearing down of that in this play. It's also challenging at another level, because it's the story of two sisters, both in love with the same man. So it works.
Drama.
Drama. It works at various levels. We've run it very successfully. It is, we've done 100 shows already. The interesting thing is, Alec Padamsee, the director, first directed my mother almost 50 years ago. And now he's working with me, my mother, Shaukat Kafi. So it's wonderful that he's still with his boots on. And Girish Karnad by far is one of the best playwrights we have in India.
Fantastic. You know, Shabana, when we're talking about the Indian film industry, for example, and I'm thinking just Bollywood now, not theatre or anything like that. So on the screen, did you see that recent hoo-ha where Kangana Ranaut and Karan Johar got into it over nepotism? And she was claiming that, look, there's a problem in Bollywood about nepotism. Would you agree with, and Karan Johar shut her down. Would you agree with that, or do you think?
Well, I don't see why I should be here to comment on what is a personal spat between two people.
That's fair enough. Yeah. Well, we always ask our guests about topical things. If you don't want to comment about it,
I think the topical thing really is above personalities, to actually deal with the changing situation in India. There is a film called Lipstick Under the Burqa, which the Board of Film Certification has denied giving even a certificate to, saying that it talks about desires of women, which is unhealthy for society. Now, to my mind, it's most shocking. Obviously, they've gone to the tribunal. But to my mind, this is more shocking, because when this government came into power, BJP, they said very clearly that we don't believe in censorship. And they said that it's called the Central Board of Film Certification. So the board here is to certify and to classify, not to censor. They also put Shyam Benegal as the head of a committee to say, what is required to change the law. And suddenly you have this in your face, and what do you do with it? As artists, freedom of expression surely is very very, very important. I'm not saying that there are absolutes in freedom, or that it should be completely no holds barred. I think it is for artists themselves to exercise a certain amount of restraint. But art is here not only to entertain, it's also here to provoke. It is also here to show a mirror to society. And a society can be only as healthy as the freedom her artists celebrate.
Freedom of the creative arts, freedom of press,
Yes.
certainly, and the importance of living in a democracy as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And of course, at the moment, we're hearing a lot about this fake news and people having freedom to say what they want.
Because social media gives you that anonymity so that you can just get up and troll anybody you like. And it's done in a systematic way to frighten people into submission. And the anonymity that it guarantees you just gives you the right to go up and say anything to anybody. At the moment, I really celebrate the student community, the university students in India that are putting up a very, very strong resistance to any attempt to silence them into submission.
And I hate to do this, but we're running out of time. But Shabana Azmi, Bollywood legend, thank you so much for joining us on the BBC Asian Network. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.